A Real Pain was a movie that completely caught me off guard. I had gone into the movie expecting a comedy about two cousins traveling together, but what I got was a heartfelt emotional journey of two young men that seemed to tell the story of every person in grief. In this video, we will discuss what really makes the movie special. This is an exploration of A Real Pain, and you're watching the Manor Movies. To give some background, A Real Pain is a movie about two cousins, Benji and David, who are traveling together after a long time of not seeing each other. Though this is not an adventurous trip but a journey to grief. The two cousins head on this journey to honor their grandmother who passed away not too long ago, and we see that the two are definitely broken by it. Using the inheritance money she left them, they travel to Poland to imagine her life before she came to the US. This movie already takes us to one of mankind's worst atrocities to understand the pain and suffering their grandma went through. But what follows is a spiritual journey for both the characters to understand the value of struggle and pain. The movie starts off with an introduction to Benji, played by Kieran Culkin. He looks worn out and tired, his eyes seem dry from all the tears, and this is when the movie title drops. In this scene, he is looking away from the light, which accentuates feelings of melancholy. He is quite unlike how he is in the rest of the movie, which really makes the scene stand out on a second viewing. In contrast to this, we get introduced to David in a more chaotic manner. He rushed towards the airport to meet Benji and is constantly calling him. He seems anxious and worried for the well-being of Benji. Through this, we can see that even though both of them had lost their grandmother, Benji seemed to be the more vulnerable one. We can also see that David feels responsible for Benji and is afraid that Benji will mess up in some way. It should also be noted that David was worried that Benji will not be at the airport, but Benji was already there. This shows us that there is some level of fundamental misunderstanding between the characters. When they meet, we start to understand much more about them. Benji is an outgoing, fun guy with an explosive personality. He is well liked and easily gets along with people in general. This is reinforced when they meet up with their travel group, where Benji becomes a bridge for even David to interact with the others. This is because David is shown as a shy and timid person that keeps distance from everyone but Benji. We can even see it in their outfits, as Benji usually wears sweaters with bright colors and loose fitting, and David sports clothes that are dull and covered. Here, the contrast between the characters is well established, with Benji seen as open yet unmanaged, and David seeming rigid yet insecure. We see that this very contrast is the reason why they are constantly in conflict with one another throughout the movie. These two characters, while they care deeply about one another, also envy each other. David, due to his insecurities, has always admired and envied Benji's comfortability with the crowd. We can see that when Benji quickly notices that Marcia seems sad and immediately goes and talks to her, leaving David. He's left looking at Benji from the back as he successfully makes new friends. David is also seen sitting away from the group even though they all travel together and have built good rapport because he is afraid of how he will be received. However, this envy is only part of his resentment towards Benji and himself. To understand the rest, we must look at Benji. Benji, even though confident and sociable, does not have his life together. He is someone who spends his time getting high, and at the moment, he does not have a job. He envies how David has his life together and manages to keep moving. David has a family and a good career, and Benji is living with his mother. The two characters, although on a journey to grief, point fingers at each other for shortcomings of their own life. When their grandma passed away, Benji lost all hope and fell into depression. He had two people in his life that kept him rooted in reality, one being his grandma who passed away, and the other being David who has not visited him in a long time. We can see this when Benji says that David's feet looks like his grandmother's. Here we are told directly that the two had similar positions in Benji's life. With the absence of both of these entities in his life, he chose to overdose on sleeping pills to end all the suffering. We see clues about this throughout the movie, with how low Benji speaks about himself, and by the red thread he has wrapped around his wrist that many victims of self-harm use. This is the biggest reason for resentment between the two characters. Benji resents David for not being there for him, which we can see through the many insults and pointed words that are said by him. When Benji tells David that nobody wants to be alone, he is directly questioning why he was abandoned. And David resents Benji for hurting himself and feels some level of guilt and shame due to his distance from Benji. Due to this, David holds back and tries to accommodate Benji as well as he can. He even attends calls from his family in the washroom so that Benji does not feel left out. Through this journey, they find a way to forgive one another and even themselves. We can see this through the many stops they take within this journey. Firstly, there is the Warsaw Uprising Monument, which celebrates the courageous fight for freedom and independence. We see that David is shy to pose with the statues in this place, but Benji jumps right into it. He calls the rest of the group to make dramatic poses. These statues of struggling men, which perfectly parallels the start of a journey for these two characters. We see that David is shy and strict with boundaries. Here, Benji tries to live and go back in time to what the statues represent, but David is not quite ready yet. Following this, we get a glimpse of what life in Poland was like before the oppressive regime took over, where the guide talks about where businesses, homes, and public spaces once existed. This shows us the potential and abundance of happiness that did and could exist even in the harshest of climates. Then we travel to the Jewish cemetery of Lublin. Here we see that Benji is annoyed by the information dump about a tragedy and says silence is preferred, again showing his need for someone to be present in his life when he spiraled. This was a point of reflection to David that silent understanding was all Benji was looking for. Surrounded by gravestones, there's a feeling of deep vulnerability with everyone, and here David also understands the need for experiencing the suffering and not merely observing it. But this is also a point of reflection for Benji, as the facade of positivity and humor slowly starts being transparent. He is someone who is deeply unwell and requires help. It is important to note that the dinner scene comes directly after the scene. In a way, this movie is comparing the tragedy of the Holocaust and the pain these two were facing. The cemetery represents all the effects and results of the tragedy, and this is where the characters fight in the most explosive manner. Within this dinner scene, all the baggage comes out. David speaks out about his issues with Benji, and Benji exhibits how he cannot behave in an appropriate manner. Here, Benji tries to play off his pain by acting funny, but it only ends up making the scene much more awkward. Through this, we can understand that it is a coping mechanism, and after he takes a break, we can see him calm down. In the beginning of the scene, we can see that he was annoyed by the distracting piano music, but by the end, he goes and plays the piano to calm himself down. Through this, David truly realizes where he went wrong, as he suddenly remembers they used to take lessons together. It carries him back to a time when they grew up together and presses on his guilt even further. Similarly, Benji is also asked to self reflect, as he too realizes that to some extent he cannot be holding on to other people for support. During this scene, he hears about everyone in their group pulling themselves out of misery, but he was not able to, and constantly shifts blame around to deal with it. When Benji plays the piano, it is bittersweet and could be seen as self expression of his pain and the loneliness in an open way. This is when we get to the true depth of this movie, where they visit the concentration camp. This is when we see the suffering which took 1,000 miracles to get away from. We see the worst suffering people can go through, as we see these hollowed out rooms where once pain was all that existed. It truly puts perspective in everyone that these are the conditions which people had to survive, and understandably, it upsets all of them. Following this, we can see that David is completely numb and Benji is having a raw emotional outburst. When we are shown the images of shoes bundled together, we get the feeling that thousands of different people all shared this unifying struggle to live. This only motivates Benji and David to heal from their pain, but also to find unity in the moment of grief. Following this, we get the emotional catharsis for both of these characters in the rooftop scene. Here, both these characters openly express where things went so wrong for both of them. Here, when asked about what is next, Benji has nothing. He says that he has to help his friend with their house project, but David currently points out that that is not Benji's life. Benji then opens up about how he misses the closeness they once had, whereas David shows only why he escaped from their little town. He felt small and unremarkable, so he left for a different life, but felt the weight of guilt on his shoulders now. Though nothing gets resolved, they both get to speak and walk back in silence. They were both blaming each other for their own pain, that they did not realize till now just how they view each other. Finally, they arrive at their grandma's house, where they expect this journey to provide them with resolution, but that does not happen. As a matter of fact, the house is quite unremarkable as well, and there are no tenants there. They think to themselves that they will leave a visitation stone there in order to finally submit their pent-up emotions and to respect the Jewish traditions. But their neighbor tells them that they cannot leave the stones there, as some old woman could trip over it. This tells us that you cannot simply displace your pain onto another person or a place, like this house. This will only end up in somebody else being hurt for you, and this will only add to the suffering, not reduce it. Furthermore, they cannot even speak the language to understand what the neighbor says, so this attachment they seem to have to this place is more in their imagination. Following this, Benji recalls of a time when his grandma slapped him. for being late to an occasion. He recalls his event fondly as he says that she was the last person to guide him. Through this, they realize that the true attachment they have is towards themselves and the people they experience life with. Now they are asked to carry the stones with themselves as a way to say that they must carry their own cross in order to move on. In the end, when they reach back, David is able to get back to his house soon. He asks Benji if they can hang out together, to which Benji said maybe another time, showing that finally these characters can find a way to care and depend on each other without having to consume the other person. From this, David gets back to his house, leaving the rock in front of the door, showing that he carried the pain and let it go by filling his family with memories like his grandma once did. Before he goes back, we can also see him slapping Benji to reassure that he would always be around him like his grandmother. Benji tells David that he will stay in the airport for some more time as he likes watching people in their candid self. This allows Benji to not think about the attention he commands and simply cry out one last time for everything. Here, the airport symbolizes a period of stagnation where people need to process their emotions in order to finally take off, a period of self reflection. The movie ends with the title showing to the right side where Benji is looking towards the sun. His eyes are filled with tears, but he seems to smile, which shows that he has let go of the nihilistic outlook and is filled with optimism. He carries the pain with him, but he is also able to look at a future where the 1,000 miracles will happen for him as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.